Bobby Kotick has finally left Blizzard, and is this the light of hope that Overwatch has been looking for? Hi everyone, Abby here. In today's video, we'll be discussing the implications of Bobby Kotick leaving Overwatch, as well as what the developers had to go through. Now, I'm going to do my level best to kind of summarize this and keep it short and concise in about 10 minutes because there is a lot to talk about. But I wanted to open the books and pages of trying to make people understand something that I feel like is being overlooked. While yes, I do believe that Bobby was a huge piece of turd that had ruined a lot of projects and a lot of scope for the Overwatch team, I do also think that there is an area where we need to understand that yes, the developers, the marketing teams, the sales teams, and all this type of stuff, these people are going to remain the same. So the changes that we think we might be getting to Overwatch might not actually be happening. Will there be some changes? Yeah, for sure. But will there be some grandiose changes that change the way the game plays? Like, are we going to go back to 6v6? Or is there going to be a monetization overhaul? Or will the shop be different? Is the battle pass going to work differently? Will we be able to, make back our currency? I don't think so. And that's kind of what I want to talk to everyone about today and dig deeper into this as we go along it. Anyways, so for those that don't know, Bobby Kotick is basically like the head honcho, the big boss at Blizzard, Activision Blizzard. There's been scandals. He's been a very horrible person. There's honestly a huge list of things that he's done, ranging from sexual harassment to verbal harassment towards employees to just being a piece of garbage. Like, as much as you can think of, like whatever you can think of that, oh my god, this guy probably, like, was a horrible person, he has done it. To those of you that know about the sweet situation and what happened there, I don't think I need to explain any further why Bobby is a very, very bad person. Now, the thing is, after the whole lawsuit and everything, as well as Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, or merging, or whatever you want to call it, this man is finally being pushed out of his reins. He's kind of finally being like, get lost. Nobody needs you. Nobody likes you. And, you know, there is truth and merit to the fact that, a couple of developers that don't work with Overwatch anymore, have been able to openly state how Bobby had ruined a lot of things that they had worked for. For example, while I cannot find the tweet at the moment, and I really did my best to find it, Tracy Kennedy from the Overwatch team, she had worked on Overwatch 1, she was helped developing Overwatch 2. She had basically said that Bobby was one of the people who would keep canceling the projects for Overwatch at the last moment. Like, practically a project for Overwatch would be finished, and at the last moment, Bobby would basically say that, no, don't do this, and do something else now. And of course, from a development standpoint of you putting time and effort and resources into making a thing, that is going to be frustrating. It's like, hey, I finished the cake, I might as well serve it. And Bobby's like, no, don't serve this cake. In fact, take this cake, throw it down the garbage bin, and now do something else. So obviously, by that logic, you never have anything to serve to your customers if the chef himself is telling you, no, keep throwing away the food that we keep making. Hey, like, maybe there's a quality that Bobby wants that he might be like a little bit of a perfectionist in, but let's be honest, looking not just at Overwatch, but also the state of their other franchises, um, Blizzard has somewhat, just to a limited extent, struggled with quality. Not completely, but they have been in recency struggling just a little bit when it comes to figuring out like what makes a game high quality nowadays. Because obviously, Blizzard doesn't struggle with giving you great graphics, giving you great character stories. I think everybody can somewhat agree on that. If you follow Warcraft, if you follow Diablo, Overwatch, they have some compelling characters. They have standouts that anybody can recognize, but that's never been where Blizzard games have kind of struggled with in recency in the modern gaming era that we are in now. They've kind of struggled in maintaining consistent quality. And as far as Overwatch goes, Overwatch has just kind of stabilized itself. Anyways, so that was kind of what Tracy Kennedy shared. Now, I do have a screenshot of Andy Belford. If anybody does not know, Andy Belford was the community manager who was working with Overwatch throughout, like, basically during the era that quote unquote Overwatch 1 had died. And he stuck through Overwatch, basically helped articulate a lot of posts. I honestly miss this guy. I thought he did a phenomenal job communicating to the community. His wording, his, like, he was the guy that communicated stuff. And honestly, I'm, with no offense to Jared Noose, but I believe Andy Belford was amazing at controlling bad situations and things like that. But nowadays, we just get Aaron Keller or Jared Noose directly who talk about the goods and the bads. Now, Andy Belford came out and he spoke on this topic. He said, I'm going to be breaking my silence to share a fun fact that when we had planned Overwatch 2's Steam launch, my team warned to, Blizzard themselves or to Bobby Kotick that in months in advance that they were going to be getting review bombed and that they had begged for more information, more details, and more resources to help with the anticipated influx, which was all flatly denied. And he went on to say that the moderation of Steam was put on the community team. It was not even a function of the community at Blizzard, despite his refusal to want to expose his team members to those levels of toxic content and posts. When asked whose decision was it to launch on Steam with no additional help, it was Bobby Kotick's. And he goes on to say that this is the only one of the examples of the toxic culture that Bobby Kotick bred at Activision Blizzard, and that crap flowed in downstream, usually going down uh, to the overworked individuals, and management was too busy reacting to properly facilitate the decision making, and a lot of the decision making just made zero sense. Sorry. And at the end of the day, at the end of everything, player experience and workers meant nothing to the executive leadership. It was all about the money that they made and the quarter's earning calls. Now, I respect and like Andy a lot. I had the privilege of being able to interact with him a handful of times in the past, within 2020 or all the way to 2022, even when he had left the Overwatch team. But I am going to kind of share some insight that I feel like, that we need to talk about to be fair on both sides. Now, there is a perspective that I want to share with everyone that basically, while yes, Bobby Kotick had made the end all be all decisions, I think people need to understand that when you are working within a business, you have teams. You have teams for marketing, sales, production, quality control, etc., 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 etc. So there's more than just the game development team. Yes, Bobby Kotick probably made a lot of final calls that the development team and all these other teams weren't fans of, and most likely, when it came to how to make money, there was an influence that he had towards the developers. However, there is no denying that the Overwatch team themselves, Team 4, has failed the Overwatch community. And that, with all due respect again to Andy Belford, that quote unquote, when they were begging for more information, details, and more resources to help with the anticipated influx of review bombing, you know, he's saying it as if that no, none of these reviews were basically justified. That the people were going to review bomb us because they hate Blizzard, and we want more info, more details, more resources. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I believe what he was trying to say here was he was saying that if we had more ways to make the community understand why Overwatch cannot meet the new promises in Overwatch 2, then we'll be able to kind of soften the blow. Now, I'm going to keep it very realistic with Andy. Andy, you and everybody else would have not done anything, any single thing about the fact that Overwatch 2 lied to its consumers. Till this day, as I speak, it has lied about numerous things. I will do a dedicated video and why I'm ashamed of the fact that Overwatch 2 turned back on its promises. It didn't deliver on the PvE content. In fact, we barely have that to begin with. It tried to focus on being a PvP game, except it turned its back on like more than half the promises they made on how to improve the PvP experience, and we are literally back in a high sustained meta again. So we have never moved away from the goats like playstyle that killed this game, and we are again back into it again. The balance is atrocious. That plays into my previous point, and that was another promise that they'll be more aggressive with, but they're not aggressive. They're extremely careful. They're extremely scared. They're trying to homogenize their characters and their roles, and it's extremely tiring. Forget PvE and PvP, they weren't even able to deliver on some of the better ways of monetization that they had kept promising in the earlier months, that no, monetization will improve. There are improvements coming to the battle pass. And what was the improvement to the battle pass? What was it? What was it? Think about it. You guessed it. You get to make 1,500 free credits to use on old skins. So, yes, there's an argument to be made that there are a ton of old skins to spend those credits on. But, like, in what battle pass, in what world, if we look at all the big games, we look at Fortnite, we look at, Halo. Halo system is amazing, by the way. And that's kind of like how, now that they're kind of under Microsoft, I hope Blizzard can follow that. But that's besides the point. My point basically is that the blueprint was set by Fortnite. Fortnite allows you to make back the V-Bucks that you paid and then some more. It doesn't hold its consumer back from the spending. It's as if like they reward you. They're like, hey, you spent money on the battle pass. Here's a little bit more. If you want, you can spend it in the shop. If not, you can save it and maybe spend it at a later date when you have more. So the consumer is always feeling better about their purchases and everything. And this has nothing to do with Bobby Kotick. This has more to do with the marketing team and what they suggest. Because if anybody in the comments is going to say, well, no, that's not the marketing team, that's Bobby Kotick, okay, then by your logic, with Bobby Kotick now leaving, the Battle Pass should get a complete re-overhaul and should be a more rewarding user experience. If it is not a rewarding user experience, that was not Bobby Kotick's decision. There's no ifs and buts about this, and I don't want to hear it in the comments because I know somebody's going to try and be a smart aleck that the poor developers. There is a part that was played by the developers. Understand one thing. Let's make an argument that Bobby Kotick is the one that cancelled Overwatch 2's PvE dedicated development. Why? Okay. He probably saw that the development team currently was unable to deliver what was promised. So in regards to that, he's like, okay, no, scrap this and focus on PvP and focus on making money because there's nothing like this. The Overwatch has nothing going for itself. So what happened with the development team, right? Then they're like, then kind of the developers themselves admitted to this, like when they were breaking down the news to us that PvE wasn't happening to the scale that we thought it was. I believe Jared News had quite literally said to the community, in a subtle way, he said, no matter how hard we tried to make it replayable, we could not make it replayable. It really was kind of like this one and done, or maybe maximum 5 playthroughs type of thing. It wasn't going to be this highly replayable co-op, which is sad because when they were showing us the Overwatch behind the scenes, they were like, oh yeah, if we want, we can load up a game of Overwatch 2 PvE whenever we want and share this with you over 100 missions. And what I don't understand till this day is that's surely those missions and some forms of them are here and there. Release them. Instead, where did that development go? That development went into making what? You guessed it, these random hero mastery missions. Like, what is this? Like, first of all, like, I love the hero mastery missions. I think they're fantastic. I think some way, shape, or form we should be able to play them in queue. But I understand the hardware limitations that come with it. But what I think about is like, while that is nice and all, like the how do I say this? Like, what I mean is, while the developers can do this like fun like side content, that is sadly that is what they are capable of. They're not capable of doing this bigger content that people keep thinking Overwatch is going to do. Unfortunately, it does not. A lot of their content, that is PvE or even like PvPvE content that they deliver, it is just bare bones. It is incredibly bare bones. The problem is that the art direction, the art style in Overwatch and the quality of it is so like beautiful that people think that, well, Overwatch was meant to be this big game, and it could have been, but they can't develop it, guys. Till this day, after 3 to 5, no, actually no, after 5 years of archives, they did archives, by the way, right? After 5 years of archives, Jared News is sitting there and typing comments saying things like they need player feedback as to what makes a good boss fight, at what makes a good PvE experience when they are working in Blizzard and their sisters at the Warcraft, or their brothers at the Diablo community, or the development team are right there next door that they could just kind of turn to and say, hey man, like what makes a good boss battle? And the Diablo guy will be like, oh yeah, you should probably do some things like this, and the Overwatch guy is like, yeah, okay, sure, maybe we'll try that, and then they do that. And here's the funny thing, when we got the Diablo collab, that PvE mode was the closest thing we got because it had some form of skill trees. It was randomized. I don't understand why it was randomized. Like, I think in all the PvE missions, they could be doing like leveling systems or whatever the case might be. That's for another video on what Overwatch needs to do to improve. That'll be tomorrow's video. My point basically in all of this is that yes, 100%, Bobby Kotick was a huge piece of garbage who ruined a ton of projects for Overwatch, right? But but at the same time, the developers had a hand to play in this too. And if I'm wrong, the developers can prove me wrong by changing everything that the community disliked going into the next year. They should be able to do this as soon as possible. There's no ifs and buts. I don't want to hear that they need 6 months to do this, they need 8 months to do this, they need 5 years to do this. If they need that much time, that means that the influence from the top wasn't as strong as we thought. And that a lot of these decisions were made by people at the bottom and the top approved it. Because Andy doesn't say anything about what the developers decided when it came to the monetization. And he doesn't say, or in general, we are never told where these decisions for monetization and content changes come from. Usually, when Jared Noose and Aaron Keller referred to it, they took responsibility that it was because of them. The developers of the Overwatch team had failed in that regard. Until this day, we see signs that they are failing repeatedly. There's a very, very few amount of successes that they're able to do, but it's really hard to see the game in a brighter light when they take one step forward and then they take 10 steps back. That is basically like what I wanted to talk about with this video. Is like Bobby Kotick is gone. For the people that were under his toxic culture, I'm happy for you. I hope things get better. But from a business standpoint, I understand that there are teams comprised of people who are overlooking our project, which is Overwatch, that they control more of this than what people realize. And if you don't think that's not the case, if there isn't a 180 in philosophy at least 3 months from now for Overwatch, then my point was proven that yes, Bobby Kotick was a piece of garbage. Yes, Bobby Kotick had made a lot of horrible decisions for Blizzard when it came to projects from a wider scale. But when it came down to the PvE, when it came down to the monetization, when it came down to game balance, when it came down to all these type of things, all of this was Team 4. Please do not turn a blind eye to Team 4 because they have been incompetent. Remember, it was Team 4 that made the decision like to try and force the PvE style gameplay to turn the direction over there and then turn it back. It wasn't Bobby Kotick. They openly admitted to this. That, well, Overwatch was Titan. They wanted it to be an MMO. Then they didn't want it to be an MMO. Then they wanted it to be a shooter. And then they did the 1 year of committed shooter content. And then they were like, wait, no, this can be a shooter PvE, Destiny 2 like experience. And then like they already started on year 3. They were already investing resources into Overwatch 2 in year 3. You know how I know that? Michael Chu was storyboarding PvE story content all the way back in 2019. That's how early they had decided they wanted PvE, dedicated PvE story mode content within the game. And that was the Overwatch team. And then they pitched that to, their suits, and the suits decide, okay, if this is good or not. At that moment, of course, it looks like a big promise, so the suits probably agreed to it, right? It's not just like randomly Bobby Kotick decided, no, you know what? Like, we won Game of the Year for being a shooter. No, now change it. Like, why would he say that? Like, the dude's a huge Call of Duty fan. His bread and butter is Call of Duty. He understands the point in shooters. He's probably the one that called off all these projects and doubled down on it. But my point is basically this. Andy Belfort says that the team didn't deserve the review bombing. I'm sorry, I have to disagree over here. I have a lot of respect for the people on the team. I love a lot of the members of the team, especially the art team, Dion Rogers. Massive shout outs to that guy. He has been carrying Overwatch on his back for years now. His direction when it comes to the artistry, when it comes to the sound design, when it comes to like helping out with level mapping for Aaron Keller, this guy has been a hidden gem, and I like he doesn't get enough credit. But besides like some notable workers within that team, there's also an acknowledgement that I have that the team, in terms of delivering projects to the player base, delivering promises, they had failed. And the way I see it is that unfortunately, that's going to continue the further we go, unless there's massive changes to the overall structure. And a lot of that can start with the battle pass. If they can change up the battle pass, if they can show that they understood player feedback, then that means that yes, they finally have control and Bobby Kotick ruined everything. But if that doesn't change, that means one thing. Bobby Kotick didn't have as much control over Overwatch as these developers made it out to be. Yes, he had a final say. He had a final say, like a teacher, like, no, you passed, you failed. He had a final say that, yes, I like this, or no, I don't like this. But the control over the quality and the deliverance of content was completely up to Team 4 and how they did it. That's where I'm going to leave it at for now, everybody. Sorry this one got dragged out. I tried to keep it short, but it is what it is. If you want to support the channel for free, you can do so by hitting like and subscribe to help around with the algorithm. And if you want to support the channel financially, super chat down below. With that said, see you in tomorrow's video where I will discuss how can Overwatch improve itself.